So I was sitting here thinking about those 2 packs of bratwurst that I've got in the fridge that I need to cook up, and it's not a real windy day. So I was thinking about putting the hibachi outside and starting some coals and cooking them proper. Boiling them first to make sure they're cooked all the way through, and then cooking the skin with a nice, grill. And then I started remembering just all the open fire and near open fire grilling or barbecues that I've had. Barbecue means something different in the South than it does where I'm from. I guess the folks in the South would call what I call barbecue grilling, and that's fine. I'm going to call it barbecue. I remember when I was like 4, and things were tough. I mean, I didn't know it. As a 4-year-old, I had everything I needed and a couple things I wanted. But I also remember Dad taking the charcoal briquettes out of the fire when he was done cooking them with this tool he made out of a wire hanger, and dropping them in the water because that way we could use them next time. And it never occurred to me, I mean it does as an adult, why you would want to reuse charcoal briquettes is because, it's easier, it's cheaper to drop them in water than to let 20 or 30 of them burn down to nothing when you could use them again next time. Now, while I'm telling stories of when I was little and Dad barbecuing, I probably need to tell this one too. Again, I don't remember how old I was. I was 4 or 5. I don't think I was in school yet. And Dad had the grill out back, and he was going to do hamburgers or hot dogs or something. He was out of lighter fluid. And it's, this is well before the age of self-lighting briquettes, which are horrible, don't use them. And he was out of lighter fluid. So he went into the garage and got out some kerosene, because we were a camping family. And those old lanterns that you used to use used kerosene, which is essentially really high-octane gasoline, really purified. White gas is what they call it. And he made me sit over there, and just like he always did, good 15, 20 feet away, and sprayed the kerosene on the briquettes and let it soak in, and sprayed a little bit more and let it soak in, and I got bored. So I went in. I'm 4, I'm 5, I'm bored, easy. I've got like a 17-second attention span. Probably longer than that, but so I go inside to see what my sister's doing. And I hear a sound that I have honestly never heard before in my life. My dad screaming in pain. I probably only heard, I'm not even sure I heard it ever after either. Not screaming, not like that. It was a horrifying sound, especially as a 4 or 5-year-old. And then I see him come in through the kitchen door, and through the kitchen and into the hallway, which was essentially the kitchen door and my sister's room door were essentially right across from each other. Her door was a little offset down the hall. And I saw my dad on fire run into the bathroom. He jumped into the shower and turned the shower on and put himself out. And got third-degree burns all over his body. It was horrible. Spent, I don't remember if it was 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 97 weeks, although I'm pretty sure it wasn't 97 weeks, in the hospital. We actually called an ambulance for him. And so I've always been, what happened was apparently he spilt a little kerosene on his flannel shirt, because of course he wore flannel shirts. It's my dad. And you know how sometimes when you strike a match, like just a regular paper or wooden match, sometimes some of that sulfur will light up and fly backwards at you? Well, that's what happened. So apparently it landed right where he spilt the kerosene on his shirt, his cotton shirt, and this was before clothes were fireproof. So it went right up in flame, and he tried to put it out in the grass. I mean, you could see for the next couple weeks the burn marks in the grass where he tried to suffocate the fire. And then that didn't work, and then he ran into the shower. But I've always had a healthy respect for fire since then. I still do enjoy playing with it. I actually do have a burn barrel that I burn all my cardboard in, but I'm, again, very careful with it. I've got the metal grate that you put on top to keep the sparks from flying out. I am not going to set my neighborhood on fire. That is not one of my goals in life. And I think we didn't have hot dogs that night. I don't remember. I remember a bunch of weeks later going to be able to visit him in the hospital. And just how... I mean, my dad's never looked frail, even at his weakest moments. But just... I mean, he started talking about he showed us all the place where they were taking skin samples to see how his skin was growing. He had a bunch of just little, marks on his skin where they took his skin stuff, and told us how they had to cut some of the skin off the back of his body to put it on the front of his body just to help him heal faster. And just, he was messed up. And that was a scary, scary moment for a little kid. But I didn't want to get sidetracked on that, which I just obviously did. And as soon as he was healthy, he was out there on the barbecue again. He didn't back away from it. He was the person who introduced me to what a hibachi is, which is essentially a barbecue if you live alone. It's not quite as cool as one of those mini Webers, but it's not trying to be. If you don't know what a hibachi is, maybe I'll put a picture up of it. Maybe you can go look it up if you care. You probably don't. But it's this little cast iron, essentially, bucket with a grill with a grating over the top that you can, cook very, very limited amounts of food with. It's good for a single man. I certainly wouldn't want to cook a family dinner on it. So a bunch more summer barbecues between that day and that night or whatever it was. And when Dad finally moved out, they got divorced. Mom met a new guy, very good guy. And we moved to Southern California, someplace. And the new guy, stepdad, actually to show proper respect, other father, also liked to grill, but liked gas grills better than he liked briquettes because there was less cleanup. You just turned off the gas and walked away. It was all good. which I get. I'm a briquette guy. So he put a gas grill out back, and instead of buying the propane tanks like you're meant to for those, he knew a guy who, for lack of a better terminology, hardwired the gas right to the grill. Actually ran a gas line from wherever gas came into the house, and dug a trench or whatever in the backyard, and ran a line out to the gas grill and back. So it was beautiful. So you just need to turn that sucker on high, stick that lighter in there, or throw that match in there, and the whole thing would go. And then, of course, you turn it down and let it warm up. But it was just, the easiest. Barbecuing, grilling was so easy with that thing, because, you did need to let it warm up for a couple minutes to get the actual cooking surfaces warm, and you had to scrape them down with tin foil or your wire brush or whatever you had to scrape them down with. But as much as I like briquettes, that particular gas grill in the backyard, looking out over because we lived up on a hill, looking out over the entire valley that we lived in, was pretty cool. I remember one time Tim was cooking hamburgers, and I'm sitting there watching TV. And he says to me, "Hey, do you want your buns warmed?" And I looked at him and I said, "Well, that's a rather personal question, don't you think?" And I'm 14, right? And that became a running joke for the rest of our time there. It would be switched up once in a while, and instead of "Do you want your buns warmed?" it was, "Hey, can I ask you a personal question?" But the joke remained consistent. If somebody went out to cook burgers, that joke was told. It was very funny. I remember we were a little bit older, and this is after I escaped Southern California with my life, essentially. One time, Tim, we should probably call it smoked at this point, smoked the Thanksgiving turkey on a Weber grill. And it was, that sucker cooked all day. Literally. Well, they cook all day in the oven. Of course, they wouldn't be done in 5 minutes on a grill. So very good. So very good. As long as I've had an outside, because in apartments you don't really have an outside. I've had one type of grill or another, whether it was, when I lived in the house with the ex, I had a full size, like a Weber or a Weber ripoff grill. And I'd set it up in the garage or just outside the garage, because okay. Side note here. So my brother's ex-wife, when she was with the guy she was with before she was with my brother, she and her honey at the time wanted to grill up some steaks or pork. I don't know, something, right? But it was the middle of winter, and they lived in an apartment, and it was all rainy, and they didn't want to go do it outside. So they just set the grill up on the kitchen table, I don't know, and decided to cook in there. Don't do this. She had completely passed out, and he had just made it to the sliding glass door to open it up before he passed out. And then the air came back in, and they were fine. But yeah, don't do that. Anyway, I would set up when I lived in the house with the ex. I had the I had the grill in the garage, and I'd pull it just outside the garage because don't do that. Um, and I would cook whatever she would let me. I freaking love grilling. Man, meat, and fire. What can go wrong? And then lived in an apartment for a while. Lived, shall we just call it here? A couple apartments. Lived here and there for a while. Finally moved into the place where I stayed for a dozen or so years, and had an outside again, and got myself a little mini Weber, the one guy Weber, and bought myself a cast iron pizza tray to put under it because any hot ashes I wanted to fall out onto something that hot ashes wouldn't burn through. Because that area, I'm not going to say it was wooded, but it had a lot of old growth trees in it. And so, all the dried leaves you have on the ground from old growth trees, etc. And I had this thing I lived up a flight of stairs, and I had it up on the landing right there at the corner, right, and clamped the pizza tray or the pizza pan to the railing, and then we put the mini Weber on top of that, and would grill, and just loved it. Taught a very, very good dear friend of mine how to grill a girl, and had to show her, I think, twice. Really never got to grill again. That became her job. It, kind of pissed me off. But whatever. She was very good at it, too. If it was something like sausages or something, I could go ahead and do it. But when we had steak, she had to. It was the funniest thing. I like my beef rare. Okay? I like it red and warm in the middle. I'll eat it all the way up through medium without complaining. Her mom, like my mom, only thought meat was done if it was the same color in the center as it was on the outside. That was another thing my stepfather taught us, was that it was okay not to serve a hockey puck and call it a hamburger. And so she's over, and we're hanging out, and I decide we should have steaks for dinner, and I spend a couple hours grilling up, or not grilling up, but sauteing some onions so they're cooked down all nice and brown and caramelized, just like I love them. And I ask her how she likes her steak, and she says, "Well, I've always only ever eaten them well." And I said, "Okay, well, that's disrespectful to the steak and the cow it came from. So I'm going to cook yours like I cook mine, and we can always cook it more if you don't like it." And she agreed. And so I hit about medium rare on both of them. And you let them set, right? Which I guess is something you don't have to do if you cook a steak well, because you've cooked all the frickin' moisture out of it anyway. We let them set for a little bit. We, prepped the rest of what we needed. She cut into it, and she said, "Ooh, it's all pink in the middle. It's all red in the middle. I forget." And I said, "Yeah, I know. And I can put it back out on the fire. The fire is still hot. If you don't like this, I'll cook it more." And she took her first bite, and it was as if her life had been changed for the better. It was the greatest thing ever to introduce somebody to non-overcooked meat. It was just a real pleasure. And then, like I said, I lost that job 2 or 3 steaks in over the next months or 6 months, or however long it took us to cook a couple more steaks. Now I live here. And I've got myself a little hibachi, and I built a table for it. Maybe I'll take a picture of it. Table's dusty. It's been a while since I've used it. Built a little table for it on wheels so I can just wheel it outside and cook and let it cool down and wheel it back inside because I'm lazy. For those of you who didn't know. Um, and I've got a burn to do. The wind's only about 8 miles an hour right now, according to my phone, so this would be a good day to do a burn as well. So, I think I'm going to go cook me some bratwurst. Stay blessed.